Hello. We are here to launch the first indicative nationally determined contribution of the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic of Western Sahara. I'm Nick Brooks. I'm from Garama 3C, and we've been supporting the Sahrawi in developing this nationally determined contribution. Now, a little bit of background on Western Sahara for those of you who are not familiar. Western Sahara is situated in northwest Africa between Morocco, Algeria, and Mauritania. It's the subject of a conflict between the Polisario Front, the National Liberation Movement, and Morocco, which invaded the territory in 1975. And Western Sahara remains a non-self-governing territory. Now, the Sahrawi government controls some of Western Sahara, the remainder being occupied by Morocco. Many Sahrawi, in fact, most of the Sahrawi population live as refugees in neighboring Algeria, in refugee camps that are exposed to already very severe climatic conditions. And these conditions are due to worsen with climate change. Already the Sahrawi are exposed to extreme heat. They regularly experience devastating floods that destroy homes and infrastructure. They experience dust storms, asthma is common in the camps, and they experience a range of climatic hazards that are going to get worse because of climate change. So they're on the front line of climate change. But it's not just about the impacts of climate change. This is something to do with climate justice. The Sahrawi are subject to climate injustice as a result of the conflict. Morocco occupying their land denies them access to the most resource-rich parts of the territory. The occupation forces most Sahrawi to live as refugees, where they are exposed to the worst impacts of climate change in the more inhospitable areas that are going to be impacted the most. But more importantly than this, the Sahrawi have been locked out of international global climate governance and finance processes. And this is because Western Sahara, although the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, although it's a member of the African Union, a founding member of the African Union, and has been recognized by around 80 countries, it is not yet a UN member state. Only UN member states can be parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, and only UN member states can sign the Paris Agreement. So as a non-UN member state, as a non-self-governing territory, the Sahrawi Republic cannot do these things. This in turn means that it doesn't have access to the technical and financial support that other developing countries have. So the Sahrawi are denied the external support that would help them adapt to the impacts of climate change, and that would help them to develop a low-carbon society. In contrast, Morocco, which occupies most of Western Sahara, has full access to these resources, and it uses these quite skillfully. In 2019, Morocco received around $250 million in formal climate finance and much more from development banks and private climate finance. Mauritania in the same year received around $75 million of formal climate finance, and again, much more from other sources. Of course, the Sahrawi Republic received nothing because it doesn't have access to these mechanisms. So this indicative NDC, it's indicative because at the moment the Sahrawi Republic is not in a position to submit a formal NDC to the UNFCCC. This indicative NDC is intended to address this situation. It's intended to challenge the climate injustice that we're seeing in Western Sahara, and also to build a foundation from which the Sahrawi can begin to address climate change and ultimately to participate in these global mechanisms that actually will allow them to drive their adaptation and their climate change mitigation.